Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May we please settle down so we can begin our next session. It's the Namibian Spotlight. So please, may we all sit down, settle down, and then we can begin. I'd like all the speakers to come forward and get settled. Thank you. Honorable Minister, thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Joe. You may begin. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to our Namibia Country Spotlight session, Southern Africa's New Exploration Frontier. My name is Joe Kromberg, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Please let me start by introducing our esteemed panel of speakers. We have with us today, he's Honourable Tom Alweendo, Minister of Energy Namibia, Mr. Scott Evans, CEO ReconAfrica, Shakwa Nyambe, Director Association of International Petroleum Negotiators for the Africa Chapter, Immanuel Mulunga, Managing Director, National Petroleum Corporation of Namibia. Unfortunately, Nikki couldn't be with us today because of technical difficulties, and so I think what we'll do is start with questions which I'll just put to the floor, and please answer as you think, you could all give input regardless of who the question is directed at. How do you think Namibia's fiscal deficit and public debt levels will improve with the abundance of its oil and gas resources, which includes recent discoveries and making it Southern Africa's new exploration frontier? I would like to put that question to the Minister.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody. Good for you to come here and listen about what.
Oh, we're back. And we're back.
Thank you very much again. So load shedding here is for real, and that's why the discussion we are having here is very, very important and about energy, and the poverty, energy poverty is very, very important. I think in Namibia, when you say with the abundance of oil and gas, yes, I think in Namibia we do have prospect for oil and gas. Yes, we have discovered some gas sometimes back. It hasn't been actually put into production as yet. And also, equally, we do have, those lights are very, very lucky. Yeah. We also do have people who are busy exploring for oil and gas. There are some good signs that actually we should have some oil and gas, and therefore, when that happens, like just in many other countries, it can mean a lot. It can actually transform the economy of Namibia, not only in terms of revenue to the state, but equally just in general, the issue of, for example, as we all know in the African context, the issue of employment, especially for the young people who need that kind of employment. So certainly I think we are on the cusp of some transformative activities that can really, really transform the country. But again, it always depends on what, when that is found, how do we utilize it, and to what extent then does the state actually gain from that. So, but certainly yeah, we have something going for us, and then we're looking forward that one day when that is discovered.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to direct the next question to Mr. Nyambe. What other exploration opportunities exist for Namibia's natural resources?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Joe. I think before we speak about the opportunities which are available, every investor will want to know if there is policy certainty or an enabling environment for them to invest? That's the first question they're asking. So is there policy certainty for the energy sector in Namibia? Yes, there is. And is that certainty legislated? Is it the policy? How do we know the certainty? We have certainty in terms of the legislation, obviously the Petroleum Exploration Production Act, but the policy certainty is very important, which certainty we get in the National Energy Policy of Namibia of 2017. It's very clear in terms of what is Namibia's energy approach. And Namibia's energy approach is that of an energy mix, which promotes all forms of energy, secure energy security from all forms of energy supplies. And most importantly, also, the same national policy promotes the exploration of oil and gas, and also promotes the attraction of investors. So the policy is there, and the opportunities are there. In the upstream, obviously, we have now the new discovered Kavango Basin, where ReconAfrica is doing some wonderful work. We have the Orange Basin, we have the Wolves Bay Basin, Etosha Basin. So there are many opportunities which I believe Mr. Mulunga, the MD of NAMCO, even the Honorable Minister will speak about. But the good thing is that the policy certainty is there. The investors don't have to worry about uncertainty. Both legal and physical regime is very stable. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question is for Mr. Evans. With the recent offshore discoveries of oil taking center stage for this region, what took so long for the country to recognize this economic potential?
Well, I think for the offshore, I can't really speak to that too well. I mean, I've worked offshore, and I will say that most of the majors go from where they're comfortable and work out from there. And so I think they had levels of comfort, in the offshore Luanda basins and those areas, and then have worked their way south with seismic. But for northern Namibia and for where we are, we took the licenses in 2015, but the government of Namibia actually shot aeromagnetic data on their expense over the area because it's covered in the Kalahari Desert, so there's no seeps, there's no anything to see. And then analysis of that aeromag data told us that there's a basin there. And so that, that's a great example of cooperation between government and industry. And second off, that's what sort of primed us to look into this area more. I think you've heard it all through the day. Africa is easily the most underexplored continent in the world. You could say the Arctic is, but I think there's just a lot of opportunities that just haven't had the attention put to them as, say, the United States, which has been, looked at for decades and decades and decades. But I think, as Shakwa said, I think the petroleum laws are in place that are supported. And frankly, I think that may have kicked it off as well. Once, when you see the majors coming in, it means that, they trust the government, and then they trust the fiscal regime.
Thank you. My next question is back to the Minister. The economic outlook for Namibia shows a projected growth of 2.6% in the current year and is expected to increase to 3.3% in 2022 across all sectors. What role will the new discoveries play in accelerating these figures and improving economic development?
Thank you very much. Before I maybe answer that question on the policy issues Shakwa spoke about, when investors would ask about policies certainties, or they worry about policy uncertainty, which, as he said, we don't really have a problem with that. The rules are there, it's clear. You are treated fairly like just anybody who comes as an investor. So there is no question about that. What I ask as a policymaker for the investors is also what you bring to the table. I bring policy certainty on the table. What do you bring to the table? And I think that's a discussion sometimes we miss to actually to discuss. But it's very, very important to say, let's then agree to how do we benefit from what it is we are both bringing on the table, and how do we share whatever you are actually putting on the table. And that's the conversation I always want to have with investors. With the projection of the economic growth you mentioned was 2%, that economic growth projection, does not even take into account the fact that we are going to discover, like ReconAfrica is actually drilling, very good chances that we're going to discover something soon. So that growth does not actually even cover that, and therefore, just imagine if that were to be factored in, obviously then there are very good chances then that economic is going to rebound, and we really just keeping close liaison collaboration with the companies to make sure at least that whatever has happened must happen when it must happen, so that the economy can bounce back and we can grow, and probably then grow by much more than the 2% that is currently being projected by the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Minister. The next question I'd like to direct to Paul Eardley Taylor, Head of Oil and Gas, Standard Bank. Oil and gas have always been Africa's main economic growth drivers. How will the transition to renewable energy sources affect the GDP?
Just a quick title clarity. It's Southern Africa, otherwise my boss will kill me. Context is, since 2012, I've been involved in 6 different regional exploration development plays and building them out. SA, Mozambique, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya. And we're very much hoping over the next few months that there'll be 2 more, Namibia, this panel today, plus potentially Zimbabwe as well. What's really changed over the last few years is the energy transition. I'm not going to bore you with the Glasgow story, but there are a couple of unique aspects around the African development story where the points must be made. The first one is that there is a very good example out there globally of somebody who's been allowed to develop their reserves in an emerging market over the last few years without much NGO attention, and that is the twinfold examples of Guyana and Suriname. And their speed to market, we definitely would recommend to Namibia as an example if resources were to be found. The second thing is really to develop the reserves in a world-class way. And what we've noticed in the African lens over the last few years, and we've had a ringside seat in some of the biggest developments, Uganda, Mozambique as well, is that those developments have been done in a world-class way to top-class environmental standards. All providers of capital are delivering them according to the Equator Principles, including EP4, an assessment of climate change risk assessment. And that notwithstanding, you will still make the newspapers. So that is something that is a fact of life. It's like if you don't want to make the newspapers, don't be a manager of Manchester United. And that's pretty much the same as the oil and gas business in Africa. So with those caveats, we continue to support and encourage it in line with the Equator Principles, of which we're a member of. We also have our own fossil fuel policy and are developing a climate change policy. Because the reality is, in a world with a sustained need for hydrocarbons over the next decades, it is very, very clear that the developmental returns in Africa from developing Africa's own resources are unmatched anywhere else in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
A bit to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Just a tiny bit, actually. One thing having made a few discoveries over the years, the first discovery isn't net revenue. It's all about time to execute. And just what you're talking about, Guyana, there's some great examples in Africa over the last 25 years. Sabre was brought on stream by Triton in about 13 months in EG. Zafiro was, I think, about 18 months. So time to first first oil is absolutely critical. Discovery's nice, it's great. I mean, just like Tullow and Cosmos with Jubilee, it can change a nation, but it's about when you get the revenue stream, and then it's all about execution at pace. I think that's the Guyana. I think they did 5 years. Africa's actually shown the way that it can be done a lot quicker, and that's critical when you're in this type of environment.
Thank you, Mr. Cloke. The next question, Mr. Mulunga, if you wouldn't mind. What measures and adjustments are there for rent, royalties, and tax by exploration companies?
Okay, thank you, Joe, for that question. Yeah, I think the fiscal regime in Namibia is quite simple. It's got 3 levels of taxes. You've got petroleum income tax, which is 35%. Then you have a royalty of 5% of production. Then you also have additional profits tax, which is really a progressive sort of tax. So the more a company makes, the more return they make. Government also then would want to make more return. So that's how the APT is structured. So it's a very progressive regime, which basically would, I mean, government wouldn't want to increase taxes all the time because, I mean, it's progressive. So it's quite simple. The total government take is very reasonable, around 56% normally to 60%. So our tax fiscal regime is still very competitive. That's why I think companies are still interested. And it's transparent, so it's very easy to actually know and understand how much tax you're going to pay.
Great, thank you. Mr. Cloke, Mr. Ian Cloke, are parental guarantees or other economic support commonly required from oil and gas exploration companies?
PCGs, yeah. I mean, it's various different ones with the different types of countries that we operate in. It varies. Some countries have higher forms of what we would call PCGs, others lighter form. I think the challenge of PCGs or letters of credit are the higher they are, the larger the company that has to be. And if you're a country that is looking to encourage exploration, you probably want to think more about the PCG or the letters of credit being at the lower scale.
Thank you. My last question is for Mr. Nyambe again. What abandonment regimes are in place? Are security deposits required in respect of future decommissioning?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yes, we have decommissioning provisions, or you can use the word abandonment, clearly stipulated in the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act 2 of 1991. It's a requirement once there's been a commercial discovery, when you apply for a production license, one of the checklists is to come up with a decommissioning plan, indicating how you're going to do it, how much money is going to be spent. However, additionally, in addition to that, there's an obligation now for every production license holder to establish what we call a trust fund. That is the fund where all the funds for decommissioning of facilities will be deposited. So that fund, on direction of the Minister of Mines and Energy, has to be set up before 50% of the recoverable reserve have been exploited. And the composition, is formed by way of a deed of trust. It will have a deed of trustees, which are like board of directors for a company. They'll have the same functions, just like the board of directors have meetings, reports, etc., etc. And the composition of that deed of trustees is comprised of 50% members appointed by the minister and the other 50% appointed by the production license holder. And all the work they do also is subject to the auditing. They just have to operate like a normal board of trustees. So that is the fund we have for that, and then that is what has been provided in the Namibian law to ensure that the facilities, the installations, once production has been done, are properly decommissioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us today, gentlemen. Sorry, Mr.
Sorry.
Cloke.
Yes,
sorry,
just a quick
Minister.
one.
Yes.
When we say our laws are clear and the taxation framework is clear, while that is true, we understand that you cannot cover everything by having it in the law. You can't legislate every relationship you need to have, and therefore we look at investment as a relationship that we have with investors as a government. And therefore in Namibia we understand and we believe that most of the issues can still be resolved by simply having a discussion. We believe in the roundtable discussion if there are an issue, and that's what we encourage. Because the law might be clear, but did that law actually envisage a situation that have arisen just simply because something new happened? And therefore, as investors, just to give you that we believe in discussion and actually finding a solution should the law not actually give us the solution that we think we need to have in terms of progressing the investment. I just
Thank
thought I
you
would say
so
that.
much, sir. Yes, absolutely, please.
Yeah, Joe, I just wanted to add as well that, I've been in the petroleum industry now for 25 years, and this is really the first time that we are seeing that, 2 offshore wells are being drilled at the same time, plus onshore wells, So we're going to see a situation in December, January, where Shell is going to be drilling, Total Energies is going to be drilling, ReconAfrica is going to be drilling. So it's really an exciting period for Namibia. And we're looking forward to the discovery that we believe we're going to make, and I think it's going to be a game changer. So this is really, as far as I'm concerned, the time for Namibia.
Exciting.
We're looking forward. And from a NAMCOR point of view, obviously we are shareholders in all these exploration licenses.
Right.
We ourselves have gone out to acquire producing assets internationally. So it's really, really looking good from an E&P point of view. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to add anything from the panel? Otherwise, could we maybe open the floor to some questions? But please, ladies and gentlemen, would you keep it brief, because we've all had a very long day. So we'll just pass the mic to whoever has a question for any one of the panel. Any questions at all? Over here? Sorry, I can't see in the light. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Paul. My question is for you. I'm Clotilde from Africa Intelligence. I'm a journalist. And Paul, I'd like to come back on what you said about Namibia and Zimbabwe. Is Standard Bank going to finance these projects? What's going on there? Could you just elaborate on that?
Don't know. Honestly, don't know. It's got to be found first, but we're on record as being involved in most of the material finds over the last decade. The poster child is the Mozambican case across all of them. Been involved in Kenya in various aspects, the Tanzanian finds in various aspects. Angola were heavily involved. We obviously follow very closely the South African case. Uganda, its public regional financial advisor to the Total Energies Consortia. So the short answer is don't know, but we very much hope if something is found in both of those markets, then in line with the precedents that Ian's also referred to, Ghana and so on, Nigeria and so on, we'd be able to play a role in Africa's development.
Since we have time, maybe we should talk more about Namibia, Yeah, maybe more questions will come. Yes. I think, we are in exciting times now where we're talking of climate change, green energy, And at the same time, there's the fossil fuels. You know, we just came from COP23 now. COP26. My apologies, you know. And the question, I think, is for us as the developing world, you know, Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and South America. I mean, how do we fit in the dialogue? I mean, I'm looking at Namibia, which has an energy mix approach. And why that approach? I fully understand it, because you are on a trajectory of industrialization. You need secure and reliable energy security to power the mines, the industries. And as it is now, you can do that if you use all these forms of energy which is available, and which is what most of the developing countries are doing. And to get to transition, it doesn't mean we have to jump from the bottom to the top, because if we don't build a foundation, we're going to fall right back to the bottom. There should be a foundation, hence our transition should be the one of what we call a progressive one, whereby we are using all this, the natural gas we're having. We can use all those resources we have. For example, if we get the resources in Namibia, we have gas now. There's a potential to get more. We use those resources to finance our green future, whether it will be in the next 20 years or 30 years. Otherwise, when we don't do that, we'll have a debt. We won't have the resources to finance. So we'll be borrowing money again for this green energy we are bringing on top. And the benefit won't be too much. I mean, look for an example of hydrogen. It's a good thing, good opportunity. But if you were not involved in financing that as a nation from your own resources, most of it is being exported. So you're exporting. What you do, you export. And what are you leaving behind? What are you building behind? Also, in terms of technology, you know, in terms of development and capacity. So I think those are some of the talks which the developing the new frontiers like Namibia, I mean, the approach, this is a good approach, the same approach I've heard over and over from my minister here, who is on my, you know, on my left, and other members of parliament also, which we believe is the right approach to go about now. Yeah, thank you. I've just provoked the minister. Maybe you will say something.
No, I think we have said enough. I think, like, maybe just to repeat what I was saying in the morning, to say, yes, we believe in the energy transition, but it has to be equitable, it must be fair, and it must be just. That's all what it is. So to me, it's not a case of promoting fossil or promoting against renewable or renewable against fossil. That's not, I don't think we are at that point where we need to promote one against the other. No, I think we simply believe that both are necessary. And the transition will happen. It will happen. But I don't think it will be right for us to say, let's stop doing fossil fuels simply because of the transition, which we know it's going to be some times to come. But if you do that, all what you're actually doing, you are denying a child to go to school, or you are denying a patient to get medicine to a hospital because you decided now you are going to do renewable only. So for me, it's not the other way. Let's just have a good mix, and then the transition will happen in a just manner. So that's the most important thing for me.
Any questions from the floor? Anything? Anyone? Okay, well, I think that wraps it up for today then. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your knowledge and your passion and your views. And thank you so much for coming to our Spotlight on Namibia. Thank you.